The Shark Deck.
Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Did you see the SpaceX rocket blew up? Jordan Klepper was hosting the Daily Show and said, and to the haters who said Elon Musk couldn't possibly destroy something faster than Twitter, the joke's on you. Jimmy Fallon, yeah, it took off fast. It was flying high and then all of a sudden it exploded, kind of like Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign. Kimmel, that disassembly cost SpaceX $3 billion, which you could defame 4 different voting machine companies for that much money. Hey, Jerry Seinfeld, why was the sitcom called Seinfeld? Jerry told GQ back in 2017. I thought that would be fun for me and fun for the audience, and I thought the show might only last a couple of episodes, so it might as well help me sell some tickets at the comedy clubs I was working at. We couldn't think of another title, and we figured that's what people are going to call it anyway. The show's always the name of the guy. It's not The Tonight Show, it's Fallon, you know? I did a Conan, I did a Fallon. Hey, Jerry Seinfeld, why is Seinfeld set in a diner? Jerry said, the thing that is most similar to comedy is food, and that everybody's taste is totally personal. You go to any restaurant and you say to yourself, I think that was great. Somebody else, I thought it was mediocre. I thought it was too salty. And it's the same thing with comedy. So you can't really recommend comedy in the way you can't recommend food. From TMZ, Tom Brady apparently did not enjoy AI-generated Tom Brady comedy special. TMZ reports TB12 threatened legal action. And so it's been wiped away from the internet. Oh, that sounds like a dare. I bet we can find it if we try. Tom Brady. The guys who made it explained on their Dudesy podcast that they received a cease and desist letter from Tom Brady's attorneys. They said the letter claimed that the AI version of Tom Brady blatantly violates the former quarterback's quote-unquote rights. And if they didn't meet a list of demands, which included taking down the video, a lawsuit would be forthcoming. They added, though, that this situation will not prevent them from making further attempts at AI comedy, perhaps even making one down the road that features Joe Biden. John Mulaney, his special is out on Netflix tomorrow. He was on Theo Vaughn's podcast. He was talking about his intervention again. He said, I've just been in my drug dealer's apartment, and I finally got the right balance. One pocket all Adderall and Coke, one pocket all Xanax, and I was like, I've done it. I've reached equilibrium. Mulaney said he was pretty strung out at the time, but was insisting to his loved ones that he hadn't used drugs in days.
So you were deep in, huh? How'd you get so deep in? Because I don't think anyone would look at you and think this is the Coke guy.
Good. That was the whole thing. I mean, I certainly tried to talk about it on stage as having had like a drug and alcohol problem, but it just, something about me seems like he has it all together, has the problem. I don't put that on you to be like, how come you didn't see it then? Because I really thought that I was doing life. I was able to achieve at life with the drugs as opposed to in spite of them. It took me a long time over the past couple of years to realize that I did well at what I do in spite of drugs, not because of them.
Mulaney continued, I remember times when I felt like, all right, I've done too much. Maybe I should just go down to the lobby and sit there and tell the doorman to grab a paramedic or something. Mulaney spent 5 or 6 days in detox, and he says he felt as though his skeleton wanted to rip out of his body. I remember laying on my bed, writhing. Mark Maron has joined the cast of Untitled New York Christmas Movie. In Untitled New York Christmas Movie, Mark Maron will star alongside Melissa McCarthy. Untitled New York Christmas Movie is a comedy about a workaholic man who enlists the help of a magical genie to help win his family back before Christmas. My friend Jim Breuer was on the Joe Rogan Experience last week. I've been picking away at that episode, enjoying them getting deep into conspiracies together. The topic switched to the recent Budweiser commercial. No, not the one that started all the controversy, the one that came after that. This is the one that's like horses and mountains and American flag. It's like Budweiser overreacted to the transgender can controversy and went up, go right down the middle, flags, horses, mountains, let's do it. Rogan said, it's like the dumbest pro-American rah-rah. Like, we don't know who you really are now.
So you can't just make this commercial. Like, where's this coming from?
Right.
Was this AI generated? That's probably a Chat GPT 4.0 version of the perfect American commercial. That's really what it is. That didn't have nothing to do with drinking Bud Light either, by the way. That made me want to move to Montana.
Rogan added, I would respect this if they had this and then Dylan Mulvaney just starts cartwheeling into the frame. Breuer added, but that's what I'm saying. You don't have 1 or 2 guys on the board going, I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if this is a good decision, bro. Veer Dawes was at Illinois State, and he said, I genuinely believe this new generation of kids in college will save the world. But I do feel bad because they live their lives in 2 layers. There's the performative life that they put out and the real life that they live. And the more they have to perform their lives for the dopamine and tablets, the less they embrace their own imperfections. So your flaws, your anxieties, your fears start to seem larger, more powerful. And you have to fight more because you're putting on this performative life that you want people to buy into. And at the same time, you hold people to a level of perfection that nobody's ever winning. So find yourself by embracing your own imperfections, being kind to the world by allowing people theirs. Bill Bellamy talked to Click Orlando about his summers in Florida growing up. He used to spend time between Miami, Tallahassee, and Marianna, Florida. He said, I used to have to feed the hogs on my grandparents' farm. And one morning, very early, I was out there and I was like, that's not a regular cat. And I look and I ran on the house and I told my grandmother and I said, Grandma, I think that's a big cat. And she said, oh, that ain't nothing but a panther. There's a new episode of the Weekly Comedy Thing available. That is the show I host once a week on the Live One app. The Live One app is free. So what is the Weekly Comedy Thing? It's like this plus bits. So the stories are shorter, but there's more comedy bits. So if you're like, hey, I wish Johnny Mac would shut up. Well, first of all, I don't know why you're 8 minutes into this podcast if you can't stand me. Thought we were friends. But if you want to hear some comedians along the way, for example, if I told a story about Jim Breuer, I might play a clip by Jim Breuer. It's the Weekly Comedy Thing. It is free on the Live One app. The app is free. Check that out. New episode every Monday. Remember Galaxy Quest, the really good Star Trek parody? They've been trying to make a TV version of this for years. They're trying yet again. They tried back in 2015 to do a direct follow-up to the movie that was sold to Amazon, and it never happened. Then 2 years later, Paul Scheer, yes, that Paul Scheer, took over writing the script. They were ready to go, and then Alan Rickman passed away. Sam Rockwell, who starred in the original film, said, we were ready to sign up, and then Alan Rickman passed away, and Tim Allen wasn't available because he was in Last Man Standing, and everybody's schedule was all weird, and was going to shoot like right now, and how do you fill the void of Alan Rickman? It's a hard void to fill. In 2016, Tim Allen told The Hollywood Reporter, Galaxy Quest is really close to being resurrected in a very creative way. It's closer than I could tell you, but I can't say more than that. The real kicker is that Allen now has to be left out. It's been a big shock on many levels. That never went anywhere, but now Paramount TV Studios is trying again. I think enough time has passed that you'd have to reboot it, but that's okay. Great premise, really enjoyed it. If you've never seen the Galaxy Quest movie, it is one of the better Star Trek movies. Watch it and you'll see what I mean. Chelsea Handler will headline Series Fest. Series Fest is a TV summit coming to Denver May 5th through the 10th. Series Fest described as a film festival for independent episodic TV. Some of the others going there, Jay Farrow, Adam Ray, and Joel McHale. Pretty interesting bunch there. Paul Giamatti, not a comedian, will also be there May 5th through the 10th. The Sydney Comedy Festival is kicking off. The Sydney Morning Herald has some recommendations. Let's take a look. Lou Wall is the creator of Lou Wall versus the Internet, and Lou Wall describes their latest opus as 2 shows in one, based around cyberstalking a frenemy. It's a high-octane, hyper-creative riot that plunges into some of the internet's most bizarre rabbit holes. One extended exchange with a foot fetishist is fashioned into a rap. It's a musical comedy. Lou Wall says, for me, the ideal show is a mashup of a pop concert and stand-up. Andrew Portelli is an ex-lawyer. He says, when I started out, I wanted to be Louis C.K., but for a variety of reasons, I've got away from that. That's pretty funny. Nudge, nudge, say no more. He says his legal background has given him perspective and helped him get comfortable in the spotlight. I was never a natural public speaker. I was always more of a writer. But once you go to court and speak in front of a judge, there's a real risk of humiliation and lasting repercussions, not just for you, but for someone else. Bronwyn Cuss. The Sydney Morning Herald describes Bronwyn Cuss's delivery as dry as the Simpson Desert. I'm guessing local Australian reference. But it was not a stylistic choice. She says, when I first started, I was way more nervous, so that style was out of necessity. I couldn't move that much. Her show's called Sounds Good. It includes an underwhelming response to her coming out and her time working in prisons. And from Al Jazeera, your home for comedy news, in Berlin, comedians from Ukraine and Russia are sharing the same stage as an outlet for their grief, anger, and desperation about the war. It's a Wednesday night, and a bunch of comedians and fans are in a black-walled theater in central Berlin. They come to perform or to watch. They speak Russian or Ukrainian. They are professionals and newcomers. They share an interest in stand-up comedy and more than a contempt for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Nikita is a 32-year-old comic, and she says, you obviously don't joke about the dead bodies in Bucha, but you can joke about the washing machines that the Russian soldiers stole there. Jana George is 41 and teaches German to foreigners at the local university. She says, my husband is Russian, I'm German. It's nice that we now have options over who gets to be the fascist in the relationship. Funny joke, which she told in fluent Russian. Eric Orlovsky is a 33-year-old who fled from Kyiv last April, and he said, what I really like about the Germans is their love for silence. I can't imagine the hell it'd be for them to live under the air raid sirens in Ukraine. They'd probably think, if only the rocket hit me already. And Margarita Steimerling She has also found herself in Berlin and says, "This is not my home. I have to date anyone I can get. The miserable, the jobless, even the Russians." And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow. Can I interest you in some meatballs made out of mammoth meat? No? All right, hi, I'm Johnny Mack, host of 5 Good News Stories. It's a twice-a-week podcast where I share some upbeat stories like the dog who only will respond to commands if you use an Irish brogue. Or what about the guy who's filling potholes with noodles? Or the woman who, congratulations, she passed her driver's license. Oh, by the way, it was her 960th try. You heard me correctly. It's 5 Good News Stories. Nice, easy way to start your morning. 5 Good News Stories. The number 5 Good News Stories, wherever you get your podcasts.